is the brand new Ferrari F80 hypercar. It's been built to celebrate 80 years of the Ferrari brand. It's the most powerful and most extreme road car Ferrari has ever made, with the engine from a thoroughbred racing car boosted by 5 electric motors. The F80 car is a successor to the legendary Laferrari, which means it's part of the next generation of Holy Trinity, alongside the brand new McLaren W1 and Porsche's secret hypercar project. But in this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this brand new Ferrari flagship. The new Ferrari F80 has big shoes to fill. It has to look more extreme than the Laferrari, which is one of the wildest looking cars ever designed, and it has to turn more heads than the McLaren W1. But Ferrari has a big problem, and it's all to do with billionaires, specifically the kind of people who order completely bespoke one-off Ferraris like the SP8 Roadster and the KC23. These owners would probably get their prancing horse knickers in a twist if a production Ferrari turned more heads than their one-off hypercars. That could explain why the new F80 doesn't have the same visual shock value as the Laferrari did when it was revealed in 2013. The black band across the F80's nose looks very similar to what you get on the new 12-cylinder Grand Tourer, and the front end doesn't have anywhere near the same impact as the pointed design on a Laferrari or an Enzo. It's the same story down the side. Sure, the 20-inch and 21-inch carbon wheels look great, especially with this two-tone finish, but the car silhouette looks a bit tame for a hypercar, even though the roof is 5 centimeters lower than the one on the Laferrari. There are some cool aerodynamic details if you look closely though, like the fins behind the side windows and the heavily contoured side skirts. But the back reminds me of an SP3 Daytona, just without the cool retro influences. The rear wing is much bigger than on any Ferrari since the F50, so at least that does scream hypercar! But even the wing has a pretty conventional design, and it certainly doesn't have the same gymnastic abilities as McLaren's long tail wing on the W1. But do you agree with me, or do you think I'm talking nonsense? Let me know what you think of the look of this new Ferrari hypercar. If you thought the F80's bodywork was divisive, wait until you hear about the engine, because it's going to make some people very angry. Since the F50, every Ferrari built to celebrate the company's anniversary has come with a huge, naturally aspirated V12 engine, but the new F80 has a 3-litre twin-turbo V6 that's based on the one in the 296 GTB.
What the hell is even that?
But don't stop sharpening your pitchforks yet. This is actually one of the best engines Ferrari has ever made. I absolutely love it, to tell you the truth. And a version of this V6 appeared in the 499p hybrid hypercar, which won the Le Mans 24-hour race twice. That car's engine is limited to 680 horsepower because all sorts of boring rules and regulations just make it so. But the F80's twin-turbo V6 isn't limited by such regulations. It revs to 9,200 RPM, which is the same as the V8 in McLaren's W1, and only 50 RPM shy of LaFerrari's screaming V12. This V6 can handle combustion pressures 20% higher than in the 296, and it comes with electric boosted turbochargers like the AMG 1. These use two powerful motors to instantly spool at the turbos to provide immediate boost even at low revs. But let's cut to the chase. How much power does this car make? Well, the engine alone produces 900 horsepower and 850 newton meters of torque. That's 220 horsepower more than the 499p racing car, and it's 100 horsepower more than the 6.3 litre V12 in the LaFerrari. See, bigger isn't always better. But that's not all, because the new F80 is a hybrid. It doesn't use a single electric motor like the old LaFerrari or the McLaren W1. Ferrari has given it a similar system to the SF90 and the 499p. So, as well as 2 electric motors that help spool up the turbos, you get 1 motor at the back to help drive the rear wheels and 2 motors driving the front wheels. There's no electric-only drive mode. Ferrari says that wouldn't be in keeping with the car's mission. These motors are only there to boost the V6 power's output, which they do by 300 horsepower combined. This means the F80 produces a whopping 1200 horsepower in flat-out qualify mode. That's more than any Ferrari road car ever. But is it enough? Because I know what you're thinking. This new Ferrari has all-wheel drive and electric turbos and a tri-motor hybrid system, so surely it's going to be really heavy. Well, Ferrari has thought about that, and it developed a completely new carbon chassis for the F80 to try to keep the weight down. It's light, stiff and narrow, although this had a very strange effect on the interior. which I'll show you in a bit. It uses 3D printing for the first time on a Ferrari road car to make the front suspension as light as possible. The 2.3 kilowatt-hour battery is also very small, even by hypercar standards, and this helps keep the weight down. Overall, the F80's dry weight is 1,525 kilograms, which is 45 kilograms lighter than an SF90. However, that isn't exactly a flyweight. McLaren has set the bar very high with the new W1, which only weighs 1,399 kilograms dry. So, how do these two cars compare in terms of power to weight ratio? Well, the Ferrari F80 produces 787 horsepower per tonne, which is a healthy 150 horsepower more per tonne than the SF90 has, and it's about 140 horsepower per tonne more than the old Laferrari had. But the new 1,275 horsepower McLaren W1 cranks out 911 horsepower per tonne, so that's 124 horsepower per tonne more than this new Ferrari. How does this translate into real-world performance? Well, the Ferrari F80 accelerates from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.15 seconds. That's over half a second quicker than the McLaren W1. But really that's no surprise, given that the Ferrari is all-wheel drive and the McLaren is just rear-wheel drive. The F80 hits 124 miles an hour, also known as 200 kilometers an hour, in 5.75 seconds. But at this point, the McLaren is only 0.05 seconds behind, thanks to its improved power-to-weight ratio. Ferrari doesn't quote a 0 to 186 miles an hour, or 0 to 300 kilometers an hour acceleration figure, but I expect it to be slightly behind the McLaren's. That car hits 186 miles an hour from rest in an astonishing 12.7 seconds. That is quicker than a Bugatti Chiron. Ferrari says the F80 has a top speed of 217 miles an hour, so you wonder why they didn't bother quoting that figure. Is it because they know it's not as good as what the McLaren can do? I believe it probably is. Anyway, the top speed of 217 miles an hour is still impressive, isn't it? It's fast, but it's not exactly headline news these days. Koenigsegg and Hennessy are knocking on the door of 300 miles an hour with their latest hypercars. And General Motors has just cracked 233 miles an hour in a stock Corvette ZR1. Yeehaw! That car costs about 1/12 of the F80's asking price, but more on that a little bit later on. Hypercars often come with unusual seating positions. Take the McLaren W1 and AMG 1 for example. They have fixed seats and adjustable pedals to make sure you sit as low as possible in the chassis for perfect weight distribution. Ferrari has given the F80 an adjustable driver's seat and a fixed passenger seat. What? In fact, the whole passenger side of the cabin has been made narrower and shifted backwards. This means the driver's seat can be moved closer to the centre of the car to give you a better view out. Oh, that makes sense now. It's similar to the layout of the 499p racing car, which has some space beside the driver, even though it's not designed to carry a passenger. The rest of the F80's cabin is more luxurious than your average endurance racing car, but there are plenty of design cues borrowed from Ferrari's Le Mans hypercar program, such as the square steering wheel, which also has physical buttons on it rather than haptic controls like the SF90. They're really annoying, I hate them. However, despite the analog controls, the rest of the F80's cabin is a bit of a screen fest. And my experience of infotainment systems on Ferraris is a little bit Anyhow, let's go on to something Ferrari is brilliant at: suspension. Believe it or not, the F80 actually shares some of its suspension components with the Purosangue SUV. Not an SUV, it is an SUV. You see, their active shock absorbers use similar technology. These can adjust the right height of each wheel using electric motors mounted within the dampers. This means the car can lean into bends, preload the suspension to deal with the bumps, and adjust the overall ground clearance without the need for a dedicated axle lift system. Slamming the suspension all the way down also helps enhance the downforce produced by the F80's flat floor and huge rear diffuser. Speaking of which, that diffuser, the Le Mans-inspired front splitter, and the giant rear wing combine to produce 1,000 kilograms of downforce at 155 miles an hour. And that brings us on to how much this new Ferrari F80 will cost. Well, it's going to set you back at the equivalent of £3 million. Ferrari will build 799 of these cars, and every single one has already been sold. Still, how does this compare to McLaren's new hypercar, the W1? Well, that car costs a mere £2 million, and it's even more exclusive than the Ferrari because only 399 will be made. However, just like the F80, that car is also completely sold out. Didn't get your name on the list for either of these hypercars? Well, if the Laferrari is anything to go by, there might be a convertible Aperta version of the F80 along in a few years' time. If that doesn't float your boat, Porsche is also working on its own hypercar, as previewed by this gorgeous Mission X. The car is just a concept for now, but Porsche has set itself some pretty ambitious and specific targets, which suggests it's pretty serious about putting some kind of next generation hypercar into production. For example, if the Mission X did go into production, Porsche claims it would have a power to weight ratio of 1,000 brake horsepower per tonne. That's significantly more than the Ferrari F80 and even more than the featherweight McLaren W1. The Mission X should also produce more downforce than a 911 GT3 RS, and it should be the quickest road legal car around the Nürburgring Nordschleife. That last goal is particularly ambitious because it would have to beat the record just broken by the AMG 1. That car managed to complete a lap in 6 minutes and 29 seconds. The Mission X concept is a fully electric car. However, Porsche has recently shown its commitment to internal combustion engine in the form of synthetic fuels and this bizarre 6-stroke internal combustion engine that promises more power yet reduced emissions. I wouldn't rule out the possibility that Porsche's re-entry into the Holy Trinity Club could also come with some kind of internal combustion engine.